Kroot killbrokers lead the Farstalker kinbands in their journey across the stars, ensuring they get their just rewards for their services. And in this video, we're going to show you how to paint a Kroot killbroker to a battle-ready standard. And by following the techniques shown, you can easily paint up the rest of the kill team too. Now the first thing we're going to do is undercoat the model, and to do this we've chosen to use grey cere. Then we'll begin our base coats, starting off with corn red for the cloak, then Abaddon black and Mechanicus standard grey for the black and the grey details, and then Galvorback red for the mask. So let's get some corn red onto the palette here. We'll thin it down with a touch of water, and then we'll apply that onto the cloak of the model. I'm using a small base brush for this, and we'll build it up with a couple of thin layers. Now with the cloak done, we can paint the black areas using Abaddon black. Take your time and be as neat as you can, but don't worry if you do make any mistakes, you can always tidy back up after. Next we're going to use Mechanicus standard grey to pick out some of those grey areas. So this is places like the beak and the gun, and also the rock on the base. Now we're going to use Galvorback red to pick out that mask. Again, you want to build this up with a couple of thin layers. And with that done, we can now move on to some other details. So we're going to start off with Wraithbone for the bone areas, then Thondia brown for the brown leather and hair, and then Corax white for the gun and the eyes. So let's get some Wraithbone onto the palette here. Add some water to thin that down. Roll my brush up to a point, and then we're just going to pick out those bone areas. If you're not sure which areas to pick out, just refer back to the box art. Next we're going to pick out all the brown leather details with Thondia brown. We're also going to pick out the hair in this colour. Now we're going to use Corax white to paint the rest of the gun. We're also going to use this to pick out the eyes. Once that's done, we can move on to the next areas. So we're going to base coat the silver areas using Lead Belcher, then the brass with Balthazar Gold. Then we'll be applying Gut Ripper Flesh all over the skin, and then picking out the stomach of the model in Ogryn Camo. So let's get some Lead Belcher onto the palette. Add a touch of water, and roll my brush up to a point. Then we're going to be picking out all of those silver areas. Now we're going to use Balthazar Gold to pick out the other metallic areas. Now we're going to use Gut Ripper Flesh to pick out the skin of the model, and we're taking this straight from the pot. Once that's dry, we can use Ogryn Camo to pick out the stomach. With the base coats done, we can now move on to applying some shades and contrast. So we're going to start off with Rattling Grime, thinned down with Contrast Medium, and that's going over the metallics. Then we'll be using Mortarium Grime over the skin, and then Norn Oil over the cloak and some other areas. So let's get 2 parts Contrast Medium onto the palette here. That's 1, 2, clean off the brush and make sure to dry it off. Then 1 part Rattling Grime, mix that together there. Then roll your brush up to a point, make sure you've not got too much paint on the brush, and we'll be applying that over those metallics. Now we're going to apply Mortarium Grime all over the skin. Next we're going to apply Norn Oil, and we're going to use this on the cloak and the grey and black areas of the model. We're also going to use this on the mask. With that done, we can now move on to the next stages. So we're going to use Apothecary White, thinned down with Contrast Medium, and that's for the white area of the gun. Then we're going to use Agrax Earthshade for the brown areas and Skeleton Horde for the bone. So let's get 1 part Contrast Medium onto the palette, rinse off the brush, make sure to dry it off, then 1 part Apothecary White. Just going to add a little bit more in there. Make sure to mix that up. Then we're going to apply that all over the white area of the gun. Now we're going to use Agrax Earthshade on all those brown areas. Next we're going to use Skeleton Horde on the bone areas. Make sure to keep the paint moving around and try not to let it pool in the recesses. And with those shades done, we can now move on to the base. So we're going to start off using a HB pencil to create some floor markings that we want to paint onto the base. Then we'll paint these in using Mechanica Standard Grey and then base coat the rest of the base using Abaddon Black. So grab your pencil and we're going to just carefully mark out the start and the end of 2 stripes along the base. Now we're going to use Mechanica Standard Grey to block in those lines. We will be going around the edges of this with Abaddon Black, so don't worry if they're not too straight. We'll also be painting the rock on the base in Mechanica Standard Grey. With those lines done, we can block in the rest of the base with Abaddon Black. Once that's done, we can move on to the next stages of the base. So we're going to apply a small amount of Sterling mud just around the rock on the base. Then we'll be using Rattling Grime, thinned down with contrast medium, all over. So using the small part of the texture tool, I'm going to just apply a small amount around that rock. After leaving that for about an hour to dry, we're now going to use Rattling Grime, thinned down with contrast medium, all over that base, including the rock. And I've used 3 parts contrast medium to 1 part Rattling Grime for this. And once that's done, all that's left to do is to paint the rim of the base in a colour of your choosing. In this case, we've chosen Abaddon Black. And now our Killbroker is ready to continue the journey aboard the Gallo Dark, travelling to multiple worlds and encountering a myriad of species. So there's just a couple of things to remember when you're painting this miniature. When you're base coating, be as neat as you can, as this will provide a better end result. But don't worry, if you do make any mistakes, you can always just tidy back up after. Also, when you're using shades and contrasts, be careful not to overload your brush, as it can quickly run out of control on the miniature. But if you do find this happening, just clean off your brush and use it to soak up the excess. Well, that's the end of the video. We hope you've enjoyed watching and we hope you have great fun painting your own miniatures. We'll see you in the next one. Bye!